In the aftermath of the 2021 British Grand Prix at Silverstone, Lewis Hamilton suffered racial abuse online. It's written about by the BBC, although, strangely, their chief, Andrew Benson, doesn't put his name to this one. Watch through this next half hour for the full proof of exactly how they vilified Sir Lewis Hamilton, and I am going to forward this to the police. Stay watching. You've all seen multiple times the incident that has incited the hatred. The fact was that Max Verstappen cut across the line that Lewis Hamilton was driving on. The collision was caused entirely by Max Verstappen. There's the point of impact. Right there. Well before the curbing to the corner, let alone apex of the corner. Well before the curbing, and that impacted Lewis Hamilton's front wheel. That jolted his steering. He had to correct his steering. He had to counter steer, and that drifted him away from that corner. It was entirely caused by Max Verstappen not affording Lewis Hamilton the space as those two cars went around that bend. I'll show you the three incidents of it happening 3 other times in that race where the car on the outside afforded the car on the inside space and didn't cut across their line, attempting to run them out of space and force themselves across the other car to ensure that they took the place. 3 other Formula 1 drivers didn't do that. Max Verstappen did. The world gets lied to by Redbull, Christian Horner, Jonathan Wheatley, Helmut Marko. Okay, that is facilitated by Sky Sports F1. Every commentator from Sky Sports F1 is supportive of the Red Bull cause. They lie to you, they vilify Sir Lewis Hamilton. You are presented with the notion of everybody knowing you don't put a wheel up the inside at Cox. Before it even happens, Brundle is even proposing the possibility. I'm going to play you through all that happens from the crash and then all that time between the crash and the restart.
It's not over yet because Hamilton gets another slipstream all the way down the old pit straight into Copse corner. These are critical corners for this Grand Prix.
Hamilton's going to try again, this time on the inside, a continent touch! Verstappen is out of the race and that's a big crash into Copse! Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen coming together. Hamilton continues on. Charles Leclerc now leads the British Grand Prix. Applause from the fans around him as he climbed out of the cockpit. Sympathetic applause from a wonderful crowd here that gives every driver the best of support. But
yeah, but I said it wasn't over yet, didn't I, as they came out of Luffield.
Racing incident.
I wonder what the stewards will think of that.
Could Hamilton have done anything to give Max Verstappen room there and avoid that crash? He was on the inside, of course. Was there a bit more room to the right that Hamilton should have been finding?
Is Max okay?
He's out of the car.
Lewis ran a little bit wide, didn't he, into the apex of the corner.
That's why I asked the question. Was there any more room he could have given Max Verstappen? Could he have gone a bit further to the right?
Max goes to cover the inside. He thinks he's got the inside covered, and then turns in. Wouldn't have really have known where Lewis was exactly at 180 miles an hour.
How was the head going in there, man?
Yeah, copy Lewis.
Fully alongside, that's my line. Yeah, you turned in on me, man.
No, I
don't
think...
copy that, Lewis. Yeah, just reviewed the video.
You're giving that guy space.
I think Max thought he'd already covered Lewis off against the inside, and Lewis stuck with it.
This is the start then for the man who now leads the British Grand Prix, Charles Leclerc, at the from Max Verstappen is over. You can see Christian Horner's reaction Max Verstappen walking away, waving to the fans. The first thing that has to be said, great to see Max Verstappen walking away, but no surprises that he's walking into the ambulance. He'll be checked at the medical centre to make sure that he's okay. And Lewis Hamilton back in the Mercedes garage watching the replays again before he goes off into a calm, quiet room to assess what's happened and what is to come, because we have still got a race to come once the tyre barrier has been repaired and we can get going.
You could say for Lewis Hamilton, for in order his strategy to work, he needed to lead at the end of lap 1. That was the only chance he would have to stop Max Verstappen running away with this race. That's why he was so keen to get it done so quickly, when in previous races he's been able to have the luxury of taking his time.
Yeah, it's always a tricky one, isn't it? There's such close racing, such fantastic racing, and they were giving each other room, and I feel that Max gave Lewis the room to fit a car through there, but it's so difficult when you're on the inside. But I don't think Lewis hit the apex, and that's why he ended up in the rear end wheel of Max.
Do you think then that Lewis might be getting a penalty for this?
There's a possibility. I think if he actually hit the apex, it's fine and it's a racing incident, but it's so difficult to judge when you're on the inside. But still, he hasn't hit the apex. He's a long way from the apex, and he's collected Max. So
2 seconds, yeah. Jensen.
Michael, have you got a minute?
Just hearing
Hello.
a message.
Yeah, Michael, look,
from
that
Christian
corner,
Horner to
he was
Michael
never anywhere
Massey,
near alongside. Every driver that's driven at this circuit knows you do not stick a wheel up the inside of Cops.
Never ahead.
You know, that's an
of
enormous
Max
accident.
And that's an enormous accident,
and it was 100% Max's corner. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned,
Christian Horner is telling the race director
lays on
at
Hamilton,
this moment
who should
in time
never
that
have
the
been in
blame
that
is
position.
fully
So,
on Lewis
you know,
Hamilton, which I'm not surprised about, Jensen. That's a message that I expected to hear.
Unscathed. So I hope you're going to deal with it appropriately.
Jensen will
Understood,
come back
Christian.
to you
That's why it's
in a
just
couple
gone
of
up now
moments'
that things
time.
have calmed down for a second, as under investigation by
told
the
to calm
stewards.
down slightly by Michael Massey, the race director, and Michael Massey saying that it's going to be investigated.
Yeah, Lewis does end up to an extent not quite in the middle of the track, but by the time he's navigated through the first corner, he has ended up wide of the apex. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. So will a car on full tanks and cooler tyre, will a car make the apex from the inside like that? It's very dirty, but that's you've got to keep your car under control.
Michael, have you got a minute?
Hello.
Yeah, Michael, look, that corner, he was never anywhere near alongside. Every driver that's driven at this circuit knows you do not stick a wheel up the inside of Cops. You know, that's an enormous accident, and it was 100% Max's corner. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, full blame lays on Hamilton, who should never have been in that position. So, you know, you could have had a massive, you know, accident. Thank God he's walked away unscathed. So I hope you're going to deal with it appropriately.
Understood, Christian. That's why it's just gone up now that things have calmed down for a second, as under investigation by the stewards.
But in the slipstream now for Hamilton as they head towards Cops Corner, and this is the critical bit. I'm going to just pause and try and go slowly here. Watch this. As slow as we can.
Understand, Jonathan,
Max
which is why the
gives
stewards
him
are
the
obviously
space. So Hamilton is now up the inside. But at no point is he in front. At no point is he moved in front of Max Verstappen.
I completely understand
Max
your
is now
perspective,
coming
Jonathan,
in,
which is why the
turning
stewards are
in.
investigating it.
Lewis, as Jensen rightly said, though, does appear to be wide of the apex. When they're making contact, his trajectory, I'm just going to go back a little bit, you could see his trajectory is also heading wide of the apex. He's not going there. The car is not heading, it's sort of going in that angle, slightly wide of the apex of the corner. And they've made contact at that point, and he's understeered wide. Let's go on board with Max and see the other perspective here. Made contact at that point, and he's understeered wide. Let's go on board with Max and see the other perspective here. So Hamilton on the right. Now watch Max's head. He's looked to the right-hand side. He's spotted Lewis in the mirror. Go slowly. Watch his hands. Watch his hands. He's turning right. And just at this point, he sees Lewis. And there, he makes a correction. He turns left. I'll go back again so you can see it. Watch. He's turning right into Cops. Sees Lewis, makes a correction. Gives him space. He's trying to give him room he has given him racing room, but he's also, I think, expecting Lewis to have backed out of it. That's the critical thing. I think Lewis expected Max to back out of it. Max expected Lewis to get back out of it. But they're both racing drivers fighting for the World Championship, and neither of them were going to back out of it. And ultimately, that's kind of what happened. I think Max, yes, could have given Lewis more room. Lewis equally could have gone more to the curb on the right-hand side. Let's look at it from the helicopter standpoint. I'll move it along so we get round towards Copse, and we can see here. Now, this is where Lewis comes up down the inside. We're going in slow-mo, you can see here. Now, he's got room. Clearly, Max has given him room, and now he's trying to turn in. Watch, as they get to that point, here, you could argue that Max has now started to pinch him. He's expecting, however, for Hamilton to be there, further inside. Not slightly exaggerated, but for Hamilton to be further on the inside. So, this is what the stewards will be looking at. Has Max given Lewis enough space there? And equally, has Lewis given enough space to Max around the outside? So, if you ask me, they could have both done more to avoid the incident. I would put it down as a racing incident. If I had to rule on that, I would put it down as a racing incident, that both drivers could have made more of an effort to not collide there.
Thank you very much indeed, Karun. More radio messages for you.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
I've watched this replay several times now, Michael, and I'm feeling really cross about it.
I understand, Jonathan, which is why the stewards are obviously investigating it at the moment.
But that corner there, Michael, that's not a place to take a wheel up the inside of a car.
No, I completely understand your perspective, Jonathan, which is why the stewards are investigating it, and that's why they are there.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's good that we now get these kind of correspondences, isn't it? Yeah. That we haven't had until this year. But I think it also needs to be said that once the Lewis's left front and the right rear Max made contact, that straightened the steering wheel up as well and moved Lewis a little bit wider. But it's a really difficult call. But remember, we're in a season of cost cap racing. That is a trashed racing car, as you can see for yourself. That's a huge cost to Red Bull when everybody's trying to work competitively under a cost cap.
Michael, this is Toto.
Go ahead, Toto.
Michael, I just sent you an email with the diagrams where the car should be. Did you receive that?
Toto, I don't access my emails during a race deliberately because I concentrate on the race.
Yeah, then you should maybe look at this because there is something with the rules. I'm coming up.
No problem. I suggest if you want to, Toto, feel free to go upstairs and see the stewards directly.
You know, in football, where quite rightly, recently, there's been a huge push to stop players crowding around a referee and trying to get them to change their mind and protesting against the referee. This is beginning to look like something out of a football ground at the moment.
Yeah, because Mercedes don't want Lewis Hamilton to get penalised, and Red Bull are desperate for him to get penalised. But
5 second, maybe drive-through penalty, maybe 10-second stop-and-go penalty if they decide that Lewis Hamilton is in the wrong on this. Anything is possible depending on what they think of the severity of the actual transgression rather than the consequence, which of course is very grave. A loss of potentially 25 points for Max Verstappen and potential injury to the driver. That actually doesn't have a bearing on the penalty, does it, Crofty? No. The consequence. It's actually the incident itself. But Toto is on his way. I don't know what success he's going to get. We do have a red flag at the moment, but it's unusual for the stewards to decide to hear some evidence before they actually summons everybody to have a hearing.
I was just saying I've looked at it a few times now, and to me, if that isn't a racing incident, nothing is.
It was all packed into a very short run, and we saw a level of aggression, I think, from Lewis that we're not used to seeing for a while. I'm thinking back to Barcelona with Nico and himself and all that fairly uncompromising stuff. And Lewis very, very much on the attack, and Max would have felt that Lewis was not going to give up any room, but he had to turn in for Copse eventually, you know. So I think that this is a very high level of aggression and attack from Lewis. Sadly, he's kept it on the inside and really banked on Max backing out of it, which he didn't do. So I'm going to come down a little bit on the racing incident side of things, but I can't see how they can't give Lewis a penalty because he's caused the accident. He himself could have backed out of Copse Corner. I think that was a very ambitious move, and the consequences were quite serious. And I think, as somebody already said, Max looking at him going into the barriers there, it could have been a lot worse, and he's lucky to be walking out of that. I think he's probably a bit concussed, though.
Well, I would imagine he'll feel it tomorrow morning, certainly. Damon, thanks ever so much. We're just watching the start.
Looking at the diagram that I believe Toto was referring to on the regulations, I've got a copy of, actually, for the first time, but it's all about, was there enough overlap? Was he far enough alongside to have earned the right to pass into that corner? And there was a significant overlap, as we know. And that will be the key. Obviously, by the time they got to the apex, Lewis was backing out of it. Max, with the mirrors these cars on, would not have known exactly where he was. And so I think that's why a lot of us are coming down to racing incident.
The fact is as well that at this stage of the season, after the dominance that Red Bull have put in the last few races, there's no way Lewis Hamilton is going to back out of potentially the one chance he's going to have today to try and get past Max Verstappen, because once they get into Maggots and Beckett's, as we saw in the sprint race yesterday, that Red Bull tends to pull clear. So Hamilton's going to stick at this as long as he possibly can.
Absolutely right, and I think in more recent times, every wheel-to-wheel combat we've seen between the two, Max has come off best when it's been a bit argy-bargy. For example, back in Imola in the rain, and Barcelona down into turn 1. So, and Max was pretty punchy all the way around that first lap. I think Lewis had made his mind up that the next time they were in that situation, he was going to have to leave his wheels there and play aggressive.
What's interesting is I've had a quick flick through social media, and there are as many people making the case for Max Verstappen as they are for Lewis Hamilton on that one, and it's got you all talking, certainly, on this British Grand Prix Sunday afternoon. It's the first big clash between two championship protagonists since, remember, Spain, the Barcelona Spanish Grand Prix in 2016, when Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton had their collision, but that took them both out of that particular race at turn 3 that afternoon. What we have this afternoon is the championship leader, Max Verstappen, 33 points advantage going into this race, out of the British Grand Prix after an accident at about 180 miles an hour after making contact with Lewis Hamilton, who was on the inside of that Copse Corner.
It's a great shame, isn't it? Because it's taken away what was going to be an epic fight this afternoon, but there's a long way to go yet.
I tell you what, all those that have come with Union flags with Lewis Hamilton written on it, I don't think any of them would say it's a great shame. I think that they'll be cheering Lewis Hamilton all the way through this race, but we'll go back to us. We're saying he doesn't start or restart this race in the lead. He's got a Ferrari in front of him.
Yeah, but I don't think he'll be too long dispatching that, if I'm honest, in terms of the ultimate pace of those two cars. We'll see. But we also saw...
So they mentioned they'd already looked through social media to see what people were talking about regarding the crash. And there was conflict. There was conflict in social media. Why was that? Why was that conflict incited? How was that crash portrayed? Who guided the crowd through with the slow motion evidence, evidencing exactly what I have showed you, exactly where the impact took place ahead of the curbing to that corner, and showing you exactly who was to blame for it? Sky Sports could have done that. F1 TV could have done that. They've got the technology. They could have quashed, they could have suppressed the Red Bull voices vilifying Sir Lewis Hamilton. Instead, they did the opposite. They incited people. They incited the people that racially abused Sir Lewis Hamilton for that incident. You saw this on lap 1. When you see my other videos of this, you see how that impact of Max cutting across the line of Lewis Hamilton jolted those front wheels, and what Lewis Hamilton had to do with his steering wheel to counter that. You saw that on my other videos. None of the so-called experts were able to show you this. Instead, they tell you Lewis Hamilton missed the apex. Where is the apex? The apex is here. Where does this collision take place? Well, it's already taken place. And when you're travelling at this speed, you cover a lot of ground in a very short space of time. Within a frame of that is when the collision takes place. It's about to take place now. Look at the angle of that Red Bull car. Look at Hamilton's car. Hamilton is on course to make that corner. The Red Bull car chops across his line and hits his front wheel. Now compare this with the 3 other incidents at this corner that very same race. First lap of the resume race after the restart. This is Daniel Ricciardo, and on his outside is Fernando Alonso, 2 other experienced Formula 1 drivers. Ricciardo hasn't been pushed all the way to the right of the track by Alonso, so Ricciardo's got a much better line into this corner. What does the car on the outside do? Is Alonso, the blue car on the outside, chopping across the nose of the orange car? Look at where the orange car is. He's ahead of the curbing. He's not reached the curb yet, has he? The collision took place. Can't do it. Collision took place before the curbing. You look at the position of Alonso's car. 2 cars able to make it around that bend without colliding. Why is that? The car on the outside stayed wide. It then went off track and then yielded that position because it had completed that overtake illegally by going off the track. This one, it's Hamilton on Lando Norris, again approaching the same corner. Hamilton on the inside again, not forced up against that blue wall on the right hand side by Norris. Okay, this is again a more conventional line in because the other car has not defended so hard and shoved him up against the wall. Has Norris stayed on the throttle and tried to force his way ahead and chop across the nose of Hamilton? Or has Norris understood the rules of engagement, realised that Hamilton was more than halfway alongside him and therefore yielded for this corner because the car on the inside had earned the right to space around that corner and hence Norris slowed down and backed out, relinquishing the place? And then we see Hamilton against Charles Leclerc, lap 51 of the race. When they tell you that Hamilton was desperate on lap 1, because could he not overtake Max Verstappen on lap 1, his race would have been over. Max would have just waltzed off into the sunset and won the race. Here's Hamilton finally taking the lead of that race on lap 51. Look at Leclerc, giving him space, not trying to chop across his nose, not trying to hit this white line, this apex here. Leclerc's not trying to get to that ahead of Hamilton to chop Hamilton out of space. He's leaving a wider line. He's leaving the car on the inside space. He then gets it wrong, goes off the track, and Hamilton goes through. And finally, we see the replay of the lap 1 incident. This is where Hamilton had been forced to. One car decides it wants to cut across. The other 3 examples, the car on the outside left room. This time, which was the first one, the car on the outside was the one that tried to chop across the car on the inside. And all you've just heard from Sky Sports was the vilification, but it didn't end there. It didn't end there.
He might have magnums for life if he stays in 9th place. And
thank God he walked away. That's the biggest result that we'll have today. So yeah, just relieved to see him. He's in the medical centre, but he's walked in there on his own. He's doing a 30-minute precautionary check, but hopefully, you know, so far so good.
We heard Jonathan on the phone to Michael Massey. What's your view of the incident?
For me, it's very clear. I mean, Lewis has stuck a wheel up the inside at one of the fastest corners on this World Championship. He's driven this circuit for years. You know, you don't do that here. And, you know, the result, thank God, we haven't had a driver that's been seriously injured or worse today.
Christian, thank you very much. Thanks.
Well, in the 10 minutes or so, maybe more, since we heard Christian Horner's team radio message, Martin, no signs of his anger dissipating in any way, shape or form there.
No, because his, you know, World Championship leading driver has been knocked about, his car's absolutely trashed, and he's probably not going to get any World Championship points much to talk about today, with Perez still very much last because he started from the pit lane. So, yeah, no wonder Christian's having a bit of a strop on there and not happy, because it's been an awful hour or so.
Karoon to race control.
Yeah, it's been really interesting listening to the radio there. Pete Bonnigan telling Hamilton about his penalty, but no real reaction from Lewis. There wasn't any of the, you know, argument back saying that was unfair. None of it. Just silence, and quite unusual, I thought. You know, it's almost like he was expecting it to happen.
Team drivers still running here at Silverstone this afternoon after Max Verstappen tangled with Lewis Hamilton, crashed out at Copse on the opening lap. His race over and done with, Hamilton picking up a 10-second penalty as a result.
Yeah, that's the second least penalty that they could have given Hamilton. A 5-second penalty would be the least, then it's a 10-second, then it's the 10-second, or then it's the stop and goes that we're talking about. So actually that's, as I say, the second mildest of the penalties.
But they're still digesting that penalty down here at Mercedes, Crofty. Some colleagues spoke to Helmut Marko, the top motorsport guy at Red Bull, and he's been going around calling for Lewis Hamilton to be suspended for a race. What? He thinks it's that bad. I mean, this is Helmut Marko we're talking about, so we should take his somewhat inflammatory comments sometimes with a pinch of salt. But yeah, he says it's bad enough to warrant a race suspension for Lewis Hamilton. But anyway, it's not that. It's a 10-second penalty, and I'll be able to tell you what happens when he does pit and put those hard tyres on and go for some kind of recovery drive after this.
Towards Copse, here goes Lewis Hamilton. This is where he tangled with Max Verstappen. On this occasion, he was clear and he was well ahead going into Copse, and he makes the move, and it's clean. Hamilton back up into the podium places. He runs third, Norris fourth.
As we hear that Max Verstappen's been taken to a local hospital for checkups, not surprising the impact, the G-force he would have taken there. and as I say, it was a sideways impact for good measure.
Yes, that announcement coming from the FIA that it's a local hospital, which I would assume, we hope, that Max Verstappen needs nothing more than precautionary checks, and that he'll be fine in a couple of days to take his place in Hungary for the next race. But so if this was Paul Ricard and the start of a triple header, then Red Bull might be very worried indeed about the next races to come. They'll be looking at his teammate Sergio Perez at the moment, Martin, making a move there on Lance Stroll, almost getting it done, but not quite.
You know, if Max did have concussion, they take that very, very seriously these days, isn't it? Or a cracked bone somewhere, cracked rib or something.
It went in sideways, didn't it? So it's a sideways jolt there.
The seat does support you very well, and the cockpit in general supports you, but Hamilton's pumping in some kind of lap right now.
33-point advantage that Max had going into this race will be cut down to just 7 points going to the next race in Hungary.
And Red Bull will go mad when they think Hamilton should have had a much bigger penalty for that contact. That's their point of view.
Helmut Marko saying that Hamilton should be suspended for a race after that accident, but he picked up a 10-second penalty. Hamilton's gains in the last few laps. It's now a second as we head towards Copse, where Hamilton had that collision with Max Verstappen, and he's now trying to chase after Charles Leclerc. Right, remember what happened at Copse on lap 1? Here goes Hamilton on lap 50. Oh, and he tries to get past Leclerc and goes off the track. Has Hamilton gone through? Yes, he has. He's into the lead by the time they get into Maggots. It was almost another Copse collision, but Hamilton has put his Mercedes into the lead. Charles Leclerc's led every single lap of this race, but on lap 50, he's now settling for second spot, and Hamilton gives the British fans some British cheer.
Well, there's the answer. Did that contact with Verstappen upset Hamilton? He's been up the inside there twice more this afternoon. This one was pretty punchy.
Well, look at this. How close were we to another Copse collision? Hamilton was behind Leclerc, ran wide, and then just got onto a bit of AstroTurf, a bit of dirty stuff, and had to move out of it.
Hamilton had lifted out of it, but unfortunately, as Charles is busy focusing a part of his energy on the Mercedes, he's run wide.
Oh, so even Tom Cruise, behind the mask and the glasses, I'm sure is elated with what he's just seen there. Remember, he went into battle with Max Verstappen. Verstappen came off second best. I hope he's okay, and I hope there's nothing too serious as he went to hospital for precautionary checks. But Hamilton has picked up the reins since the restart. He's chased down the prancing horse. He chases the checkered flag. He wins the British Grand Prix for an 8th time here at Silverstone, and Hamilton is back in the championship hunt.
They had to work hard for that one. It'll be a controversial one as we move into the evening, with all sorts of opinions on that contact with Max Verstappen on the first lap. The stewards, as I pointed out earlier on, gave him the second most lenient penalty with a 10 seconds at his pit stop, and he was able to recover that. Leclerc, nursing a few engine issues, drove beautifully, but we know that the Ferrari is not quite as fast as the Mercedes, but didn't it look after its tyres well, and didn't they do a great job?
Dr. Helmut Marko saying he needed a race suspension for what happened.
He had a very good look at the conveyor belt that Max Verstappen ended up in there, didn't he?
He got a penalty, Martin. The stewards decided that he was at fault for it. If you give more severe penalties, do you then stop the drivers going for moves like that? We want to see drivers racing and going for it. Nothing stupid, but at the end of the day, if you penalise too hard, they're not going to go for it in the future, and then we don't get the action.
No, I agree. I called it a racing incident by and large. Touch and go, I thought. And it depends on what other information you've got available in the steward's office, and they've got a lot. So they didn't give him a particularly massive penalty, and he's overcome it. But Red Bull will be furious. They've got a wrecked car and a bruised driver and no World Championship points.
Have you ever witnessed such a volume of opinion vilifying one sporting competitor in that manner? Wrongly vilifying them? They even talk about the stewards having at their disposal all of that information. And the FIA stewards couldn't determine Lewis Hamilton to be innocent in that situation. The FIA vilified him. Every single member of Sky Sports commentary vilified him. F1 TV gave a platform for Christian Horner to vilify him. Horner, Wheatley and Marco's comments from Red Bull were all broadcast on the platforms of F1 TV and Sky Sports F1. Martin Brundle, David Croft, Jenson Button, Damon Hill, Karun Chandhok, Ted Kravitz, all vilified Sir Lewis Hamilton. That's at least 9 people vilifying Sir Lewis Hamilton. The only one that said it was a racing incident was when they interviewed Otmar Safnauer. That's the only person you heard categorically say, if that's not a racing incident, then I don't know what is. Within all of that commentary. And despite that, after that race ended, we still get this.
Down here with Red Bull boss Christian Horner. Well, Christian, that's what can you say as the boss of your team today? I mean, is that just the way motor racing goes sometimes?
Well, it shouldn't be like that, to be honest with you. I mean, Max has incurred a 51G accident. Lewis Hamilton is an 8-time world champion. You know that he shouldn't be making manoeuvres like that. It's unacceptable. You know, he's put a driver. Thank goodness, the biggest result for us today is that he was uninjured. You know, he's having to go to hospital for precautionary checks after a 51G accident. So yeah, I hope Lewis is very happy with himself.
Well, yeah. I mean, what about it did you object to?
Yeah, well, he stuck a wheel up the inside in a corner that you just know you don't do that. You just don't stick a wheel up the inside of Copse on in that corner in that circumstance. He was nowhere near ahead. It was contact, left front to right rear, and the speed that they're travelling is one of the fastest corners in the championship, and Lewis has got more than enough experience to know that that's unacceptable, and yeah, I hope he's as I say, I'm just very disappointed that a driver of his caliber should make such a move as that. It's dangerous. He's put a competitor, it looked desperate, and he's put a competitor, thank goodness, uninjured, but he's put in hospital, getting himself checked out. So
the desperate narrative, the desperation for the only way that Sir Lewis Hamilton's strategy could have ever worked would be to have to overtake Max on the first lap. Otherwise, Max would have just sailed off and won that race. The desperate narrative.
Anyway, there we go.
Yeah. I mean, of course, just to put their point of view, Lewis.
There is no point. I don't care what Lewis said.
Alongside.
Have a look on your own analysis. Draw your own comparison. For me, that's a hollow victory.
A hollow victory. Okay. Just a quick one on Max's condition then. Obviously, Lewis.
Draw your own analysis, but you've just been given a platform to once again spew your vile hatred of an individual, something that incites hatred, incites your supporters to put hate on Sir Lewis Hamilton, and due to the dynamics involved that incites racial hatred. And that is what you, Christian Horner, did. That is what you, Jonathan Wheatley, did. That is what you, Helmut Marko, did. This is what you, Sky Sports F1, have done. Martin Brundle, David Croft, Jenson Button, Damon Hill, Karun Chandhok, Ted Kravitz. You have fueled the online hatred.
Won the race, so that 10-second penalty for you was insufficient because he's ended up winning the race?
Well, it wasn't much of a penalty, really, was it?
Well, it was, yeah, okay. And Max...
The second least, according to Martin.
His condition, tell us, was it a concussion? Was he knocked out?
No, he wasn't. He was conscious.
No, there's nothing wrong with him.
It's very heavily winded. You know, it's a hell of a shunt, probably the biggest of his career, and totally unnecessary.
And what do they need? Is it just a precaution that he's gone to Northampton?
It's a precaution. He's gone to the hospital, and you know, thankfully he got out of the car unaided, and he's battered and bruised, but he's thankfully he's okay.
Well, as you say, that is the most important thing.
That's the biggest result today. So.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Christian. Thanks for your time.
So this is what they did. That was the narrative. They incited hatred. They knew the nature of that hatred would involve racism. And surprise, surprise, after all of them fanatics heard what you have just heard in that volume, that is what it produced. That is inciting racial hatred. Red Bull are guilty of perpetrating racial hatred. Christian Horner, Jonathan Wheatley, Helmut Marko, guilty of perpetrating racial hatred, inciting racial hatred. Sky Sports F1, Martin Brundle, David Croft, Damon Hill, Jenson Button, Ted Kravitz, Karun Chandok, fueling racial hatred and online abuse. F1 TV giving a platform for it to be broadcast. You are all guilty. You are all disgusting. This is going to be forwarded to the police for their attention, because the individuals involved need bringing to justice for it. Thank you for your time.